English football, the juggernaut of all football leagues. It is believed some clubs in the English top flight are averaging upwards of over 500 million global viewers per match. In 2023, the Premier League agreed a new record TV deal which allows for Sky Sports and TNT Sports to show up to 270 live games this season. In return, the Premier League makes 6.7 billion. Even in the English football leagues, in 2024, a new deal has been struck with the leagues, which will see Sky broadcast over 1,000 games a season for the next 4 years. The arrangement will be made up of guaranteed payments of 895 million and 40 million in marketing. So, in this new media landscape, when teams upper in the pyramid are spending big money, how can non-league teams ever keep up with that? Or even in the women's game, how can they ever compete with the men's game? Well, in this podcast episode, we're going to look at these issues, talking to industry standard professionals and getting their views on these topics. Starting off, I visited non-league club Gosport Borough, who played their football in step 3 of the non-league pyramid. I'm here at the AEI Stadium, the home of Gosport Borough. Today we are watching the men's team in action. Let's hear what President Jeremy Fox had to say about this amazing club. Jeremy, you've been here for a long time now. How did you get involved with the club?
Oh, this goes back to when I was 17, and bearing in mind I'm now 46, it gives you an idea. I just left boarding school, come back to Gosport to live, and went to college, and really I was already a fan for about 4 years, so I just came along to volunteer, and it has just gone from there. The rest, they say, is history.
Well, I'm guessing the club is a very different place today than what it was then.
Yes, certainly. I mean, I know you can't look behind you, but that stand for one wasn't there. The whole ground, the whole club, it's just different. It's come on so much. It's been through so many different eras in the last 30 years since I've been here. I couldn't go into it, but it's in a very, very good place now. And as president, I can be proud of where the club is now and where we're going, I think.
And being a president of the club and being at Gosport now for so long, you would have seen a big trajectory now in fans. From when you first started, probably nowhere near as many fans to what is here today.
Yeah, when I started to watch, they were lucky if they got 150. They were laughing if they got 200. If they got 300, they're ecstatic. Nowadays, we're getting 800 average, and last season we broke the 1,000 barrier several times. I think it just shows you how far we've come in terms of pulling power and getting people in to watch.
Well, you could say, if you look at the top levels of English football, you've got the likes of Pompey near us, Southampton. Well, less said about them, the better for this interview. But either way, you've got loads of big clubs on the south coast. Why do fans come to clubs like Gosport, Havant and Waterlooville when you've got those bigger clubs on our doorstep?
I think non-league football, the profile of non-league, especially since COVID, has come a long way, because COVID has kind of brought people's attention to non-league in a different way, because it's become personal, and also I think certainly at the top end of professional football, the Premier League, it's expensive. Fans won't ever get the personal experience they'll get at non-league. They won't get to go for a drink with the players. And to clubs like, and not being, no disrespect intended, to a club like Southampton, fans are numbers, they're pound signs. You come here, you can go and speak to the chairman, you can go and have a pint with the players, you can chat to the players. It's just hands-on, it's personal. And that's why non-league, it offers a more affordable day out than a day at Southampton. Now, again, no disrespect to people that go and watch Saints, but it's just a lot more affordable. And in these hard times, people are looking for value for money, and I think non-league provides it.
And you said about, it almost sounds like Gosport and these non-league sides are a lot more family-based as opposed to those bigger juggernauts upwards.
Yeah, certainly we were. When I first joined Gosport, everybody knew everybody else, the fans, the players, the committee. And to an extent, that's still true, even though the club's grown. And you've still got the familiarity, and I'd hate for us to lose that now. But that's the same at a lot of non-league clubs. You ask Hanwell, who are here today, it's probably the same for them. And same for Fareham and for Porchester, for Moneyfields, and that's what makes non-league so good.
And we're talking about all these bigger non-league sides. The one big drawing point of a lot of these non-league sides is Obviously, the TV deal in the Premier League, EFL, there's a 3 p.m. blackout where fans are encouraged to go and see their local non-league sides. However, a lot of fans are calling for this deal to be scrapped. Would this deal being scrapped be the end of a lot of non-league teams?
No, but I just think it would be the rich getting richer and the poor getting poorer. I think because I think the TV market is saturated right now anyway. You can watch Champions League, EFL, Premier League, the Scottish Premier League, and it's all on TV. You don't even have to leave the house. So you're in danger. If the 3 p.m. watershed is scrapped, you're in danger of that just getting worse. So whilst I don't think it will be the end of non-league, it will make it harder. Definitely. You'll get your diehards that will come here every week, but then there's a few. If it's wet and it's windy in the middle of winter and you're kind of on the fence, what are you going to do?
Well, exactly. You'd think you'd go to one of those bigger clubs if that TV deal was to come in.
Or you stay at home and watch a game on the TV.
Well, exactly. If that was to come in, though, do you think more money should be invested, or should it be invested anyway without this TV deal?
Yeah, of course. And it frustrates me to see that there's a lot of money sloshing around at the top end of the game, and not enough filters down this far. It's getting there slowly, but non-league is just left to fend for itself financially. And then you look at the travelling that clubs have to do at this level, and even a couple of levels below, and you just think, come on, give us a hand, give us some help. Look at the regionalisation of leagues. I'm just going to make one more point, and I'm hoping those sprinklers don't get us. But in this week just gone, Bishop's Cleeve had to go to Falmouth. Bishop's Cleeve near Gloucester, having to go to the far end of Cornwall on a Tuesday night. Make it make sense.
Well, you said about there making it make sense. Could it be put in place a legislation where the money does go strictly to the clubs rather than spending it on players? How would they get around that, would you say?
That's a tough one, especially in this division where there's a little bit of an arms race. In leagues above, certainly it's even more relevant, where a player might go to a club that can pay him an extra 10 or 20 quid a week than your rivals. So it's a tough one, because if you're giving money to clubs, they should be able to pay it or use it as they see fit.
So how does non-league go about trying to take it to the next level, encouraging even more fans to come into local teams?
I think they've just got to keep it affordable, they've got to keep it real, they've got to keep it personal, and not try and copy the Football League too much. So you've got to make your offers, like non-league day, for example, is a really good example where clubs will make offers, and also make offers to season ticket holders of the local non-league club, of the local Football League club. Try and draw them in, bring them back. I think you've just got to be innovative. You've got to be ahead of the curve. Keep it real. Keep it affordable.
You mentioned about affordable and some of the big perks of non-league. Obviously, we're seeing a huge growth of women's football now, one being the Gosport Women's team.
Yeah.
Can you see a lot of correlations between where non-league started and now this women's football team?
I think women's football's on the rise. It is what it is, and men's football is what it is. I know it's not popular with a lot of people, but I personally believe the girls should get the chance to play the game that they love, and never is there a better example than here at Gosport Borough when the girls team went out to play last Sunday. We all sat down and watched it, and they played for pride, they played with passion, they played because they wanted to play football. And why can't the girls have that opportunity? And by the same token, why can't they do it for a living? And they are, and the WSL's getting stronger, the game's getting stronger, there's more money going to it, and it's absolutely right.
Well, there's been a lot of challenges with this women's team in particular. Can you tell us your impact on the Gosport women's team and how they came very close to folding?
Yeah, I'm going to be a little bit delicate with this, because obviously the people on the other end of the story I know. But I will say that I think it was end of January, early February, the announcement was made that the senior ladies team at Gosport Burough was folding because the parent club, the Gosport Burough Youth, had decided to wrap the team up. Now, they obviously had their reasons for doing it and their thoughts for doing it. But I thought to myself, I know a lot of these players and they love nothing more than playing a game of football. And how much of a say did they have in that? So as soon as I heard, I literally said to the chairman, Ian McIntosh, I said, can we help them? Can we help them? Can we at least get them over the line this season and then see where it goes? So we've managed to save them, and we've managed to get them to complete their season, and then we're talking to them about next season and see where they'd like to go. I'm certainly not going to stand here and criticise the Gosport Borough Youth, because they've got a massive part to play in player development, both boys and girls. But they made the decision, and I didn't think the girls should be without football. So I said, right, how can we help?
Well, this decision you were talking about, it did involve Gosport Youth, a separate entity releasing the women's team and almost letting them to die, I suppose. But these challenges, are these sort of representative of what smaller women's teams across the country have to go through, rather than just having that look on the WSL teams, women championship sides, who do get documented? You're seeing their growth, but not the growth of these smaller teams who are really struggling.
I think it's representative of problems with the expense of running a team. No team is cheap to run, none. And I'm guessing that to keep a team running, it costs a lot of money, and I guess I don't know if that was the reason for it, and I'm not going to speculate. Like I said, I don't want to be controversial and I don't want to offend them, but they had their reasons for doing that. But I do know that they've come to us and we've had to provide the means to play, and we've got them there. So it's indicative of the expense in running any football team, whether it's the under-7s, the under-11s, the ladies, or even the first team here at Gosport, which is in the thousands of pounds a season. It's indicative of those challenges.
Yeah, but by creating this entity at the club where we now have a women's team, we now have that first team, the men's team, we're creating this more equality across the whole club. Surely that's only going to entice more fans, not just to the women's team, but maybe through that women's team, now to the men's team through that.
I think it's just promoting the fact that we offer football to all. And I think that now that we have got the ladies team, we'll give them something to go work with next year. And I think with the plans that I think the chairman's set to announce in the next few weeks, it's exciting, and I think everyone should be excited. So next year you'll have the under-18s, you'll have the ladies, you'll have the men's senior, and any other Gosport Borough side, and we can treat them all the same way. And that's exciting for me, because that hasn't always been the case historically. And the Gosport Borough family is exactly that, a family. And next season, more than ever, I think you'll see the true meaning of that.
What do you think the future of this whole club looks like, men's and women's?
I think it looks really, really good. Obviously, I can't stand here and steal the chairman's thunder, but I know exactly what's going to get announced when he's got it all ready and over the line. Every single Gosport Borough fan should and will be excited. So I think it's going to be really good.
To try and get a better understanding of the implications non-league faces, I spoke to Ollie Bayliss, a BBC radio presenter who hosts his own non-league show, as well as creating content around the lowest steps of English football. Ollie, you're one of the biggest names in non-league, and can you remember your first experiences with non-league, and how did you originally get involved?
Hey James, yeah, nice to talk to you. It was being taken to my local non-league club by my dad and my granddad, Aylesbury United, town I grew up in, and it was that really. I fell in love with the fact that, you know, it felt really accessible. You could chat to the players afterwards. The players, you know, had that relationship with the fans and the chairman and the manager, and it was a good standard of football back then. The club were getting maybe 1,000 fans a week, so it was quite a high level of non-league football. They had a season in the conference and in the old Doc Martin Premier League. That was when I really fell in love with the game, and I think in a lot of ways it's still very, very similar to that. You still have that sort of real connection and that kind of raw feel to non-league football. Perhaps you don't get higher at the pyramid. You know, I think sometimes the Premier League can feel quite sanitized, can't it? And like you're quite distant from it. So I think in a lot of ways the heart of non-league is still very, very similar. But certainly it has changed, and you know, in the 30 odd years I've been watching it, there are definitely elements of it that have really changed and evolved.
Yeah, definitely. And when you first started getting involved, you mentioned you got through it via your granddad. And I feel like that's the same story with a lot of non-league fans, particularly with my local team, Gosport. So I hear a lot of people getting into the club, well, supporting the club through friends, family, etc. But I feel like another new method, which obtains a lot of getting new fans today, is social media. And the rapid growth of social media over the last 10 years, you'd have to think it's attracted so many more fans now to non-league.
Yeah, massively. And some clubs have harnessed it really well, haven't they? Some clubs have really used social media, use X, use YouTube to really create a bit of a buzz and a feel around the club, like a real sense that, you know, fans are missing out, or people are missing out by not being involved and being there. And I think it's real chalk and cheese between clubs that do that and do that well, and other clubs that still, I think, neglect it a little bit. I think some clubs are still haven't cottoned on to quite how important it is. You know, back in the day, you'd hear about a club via the local paper, maybe. You might wait on teletext or CFAX to see the scores, but there was really very few ways you could follow a team's fortune. Now you can get minute by minute updates of scores, you can see goals, you can get all that kind of access to manager interviews, stuff like that on social media, and it really deepens the relationship between fans and the club. I think it really helps clubs market themselves and what they're doing, and making themselves seem appealing and exciting. I think without that, I think a lot of clubs would be struggling to attract younger fans. But because of it, there's a lot of clubs that are really growing their fan base.
Yeah, definitely. And we'll look at more that side later in the interview. But before we do that, I want to explore more the Premier League. So the Premier League is become the real juggernaut of all the European leagues. And a lot of people say it is the main league to watch around the world. So now you've got, as you say, it's been televised so much. You've got Sky deals, you've got deals with TNT Sport. And since being live streamed and you've got so much coverage of the Premier League, have you seen a drop off of fans at all in non-league?
I don't think we have really. I think the Premier League has become this massive kind of beast, isn't it, in terms of the size of the clubs in it and the interest and the eyeballs across the world that are on the Premier League. But I don't think it necessarily has had that direct impact into non-league and the lower leagues. I think when we've seen fluctuations of non-league fans, it's been because of reasons like the COVID pandemic and people not being able to see games and then being able to return to the ground. That I think in a lot of cases people still want that sort of raw feel of non-league football. They still want to be able to go and have a beer and watch a game and chat to their friends at a clubhouse and go and watch affordable local football. So I think non-league is able to offer something that the Premier League isn't, in the way the Premier League offers something clearly that is different to non-league. So I don't think the two necessarily are always competitors. I think a lot of people have a Premier League club they support, but also a local non-league club they support. I think the way things are at the moment, with that 3 p.m. blackout, people are still incentivized to go and watch their local non-league club. I think 3 p.m. blackout could change that. I think occasionally you'll see on a Tuesday night or a Wednesday night with a big Champions League game, you do see attendances there slightly change. If there's, I remember going to a non-league game when actually Arsenal were playing Man City in the Premier League, and that sort of would be title decider a couple of years ago. And you did feel like there's a knock-on effect there on non-league attendances. So I think at the moment where the 3 p.m. blackout is, I think focus on non-league and attention on non-league is still all right. I think that could have a potentially negative impact if that were to go.
Like Ollie alluded to, one of the biggest drawing points to non-league is a law known as the 3 p.m. blackout. It prohibits games from being shown on TV at 3 p.m. on a Saturday to try and encourage fans to go and watch their local teams rather than watching it on the telly. With fans of Premier League teams and even EFL teams wanting this law scrapped, Ollie shared his views on this rule. And I'm glad you mentioned the 3 p.m. blackout there because it perfectly links to my next question. So I'd say probably often now in non-league, there's this massive fear that if it does get eliminated, teams are going to struggle because realistically, if you do have that massive title challenge at the top of the table, maybe an Arsenal versus Manchester City on a Saturday at 3 p.m. and it's raining outside, who's going to be watching a local non-league team? Who's going to want to show up for that?
Yeah, I think it's a concern. I think it's definitely the appeal of sitting at home and watching football right on the telly is one that is hard to lure people away from. Does worry me. I think the fact at the moment that the world of non-league and the Football League is somewhat protected at 3 o'clock on a Saturday, it does concern me that we might lose that at some point. And if you can put a big box office Premier League game on at the same time, that people's attention is going to be diverted towards that. I think often on those 12 o'clock or 12:30 kickoffs, you'll see non-league clubhouses full of people watching the game on the telly, having a drink ahead of a kickoff. I think, yeah, my concern would be that if there was wall-to-wall Premier League games on a Saturday afternoon, that people might not venture out and watch their local non-league side.
And almost from a Premier League point of view, could you, I suppose in some ways, understand why they want to do it? So I know a lot of people will say from a non-league standpoint that it's just greed, the Premier League wanting to keep doing it. But when you hear appeals of this idea of a massive European Super League coming in, obviously the government, they don't want that to happen, and I feel like that is why they're pushing to try and eliminate this 3 p.m. blackout, so they do stay in the Premier League and help the Premier League keep generating this massive flux of income coming in. So can you understand it from their view?
I think the Premier League is going to look after the Premier League, right? And the Premier League has its own pressures and its own commercial pressures. The Premier League are wanting to look after themselves first and foremost. I think that's been sort of demonstrated before. I think there is some commitment to the pyramid, but I'm not sure that they're wholeheartedly concerned about what's happening at step 8 of the pyramid, for example. I think as a Premier League fan and as a football fan, you're being asked to pay a huge amount of money for TV subscriptions, aren't you? It's around about £1,000 if you want to subscribe to the currently 3 different rights holders. I can understand why, as a Premier League fan, you feel you should, for that £1,000, be able to watch all 38 of your club's games, right? It seems crazy that despite paying that sort of money, you still can't watch 4, 5, 6 games that are taking place on a Saturday at 3 o'clock. So I can understand from a fan point of view, and from the Premier League trying to cater to those fans, and there's clearly a market there for fans wanting to pay to watch games, that they are very keen to do away with the 3 p.m. blackout rule and allow fans to watch as many games as possible. And I think broadly across the world, if you look at other sports, you look at other countries and how they deal with rights issues, the 3 p.m. blackout isn't a thing elsewhere. If you watch the NBA or American football, you can watch your club, you can watch any game that your club is playing via streaming platforms and TV, and it's a little bit of a quirk of British football that we can't currently.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's time to return to something a little bit more positive now. So, Ollie, you obviously host your own chat show on BBC, and mainstream media outlets like the BBC, like big ones like the ITV, DAZN, they're recently doing all the National League highlights now. How important is it that mainstream continue to keep pushing out non-league content?
Yeah, I think it's very important. I think there's an appetite for it as well. I think there's a real interest for those non-league stories, right? We see it on FA Cup third round day, don't we? We see it in competitions like that, where if a non-league club does really well or gets the opportunity to host a Premier League club, or there's potential for a story, I think that generally the world of football loves a non-league story. It loves an underdog story. It loves to hear about the things that are going on in the world of non-league. And I think what I've found is there's an audience for that. So I think media channels, mainstream media channels, if you want to use that phrase, that don't cover non-league or cover some of the stories from non-league are missing a trick. I think there's a big appetite for those sort of stories, and in turn it benefits the non-league clubs, right? The attention that's on them, highlighting those stories, highlighting those clubs, what's going on further down the pyramid, it adds credibility to non-league. The season for the National League, where Wrexham were in the National League and Notts County were in the National League, and it was getting a huge amount of attention, I think it was really beneficial for the world of non-league. It showed that there was interest, and it drew a lot of eyeballs to that league. I think probably unfortunate for the National League that's gone, but there's plenty of other stories now emerging at that level. So I think both for the mainstream media companies and for non-league football, that relationship's really key.
Yeah, definitely. And looking at your own social media channel, Ollie, I feel like there's a lot of times where you pick out these really interesting stories and they seem to blow up on your page. So they go up in hundreds of thousands of views, you'll see. And I've noticed that myself. So obviously I work with Gosport, my local team. And every time we play a team, I try and look for at least somewhat of a cool story. Recently, we played AFC Tottenham and you had Charlie Austin come down. So an ex-Premier League striker, I interviewed him and that's blown up. You have Walton and Hersham. They've got the youngest owners in the country, etc. And there's so many little cool stories that many people wouldn't even look at in non-league. And these little stories, is that also the key to success? Promoting these stories and almost being this real little hidden gem that you could promote.
Yeah, absolutely. Every club has a story. Every club, there's something there, isn't there? There's a 52-year-old who's still coming off the bench and making an impact, or ex-football league player, or young owners at Walton and Hersham, or a groundsman that's been doing it for 70 years. There's great human stories to be found at non-league all the time. There's great quirky stories as well. There's the dogs that come along to games, non-league dogs, there's mascots, there's always something going on. And often those non-league stories, I think they transcend that sort of fan base. Maybe you see higher at the pyramid. If you're doing a story about Man City, if you're a Man United fan, you're not necessarily as interested in that, or you have an immediate emotion to that story. If you're creating a story from Tamworth or telling a story from Tiverton, then I think all football fans are kind of open to be told those stories and to hear those stories, because you don't have that sort of intense rivalry and those immediate feelings, I think, towards clubs in non-league. I think people are a lot more open to be told and shared stories from the world of non-league.
Having visited the Gosport men's team, I wanted to next visit the ladies' side, who have overcome lots of challenges this season just to stay afloat. In a very different match day compared to the men's, I spoke to club captains Charlotte and Ruby. Today, I'm joined with two of the ladies' players here at Gosport Borough, Charlotte and Ruby. Charlotte, could you just say a bit about who you are and how you originally got into this place?
Absolutely. So I'm Charlotte. I've been captain of the ladies for a few seasons now. With our turbulent season, I've taken on the role as player manager as well. So here we are.
And Ruby, is that a similar journey to you then?
No, not quite. I've only been playing for 3 years, so joined the second team 3 years ago and then moved my way up to the first. So yeah, helping out with the management as well this season.
Okay, nice one. And Charlotte, since you have taken over, I'm sure it's been very different to when you were growing up. So when you were growing up, I'm sure you had maybe idols and male players like, I don't know, David Beckham, etc. Whereas the ladies today, I'm sure they had very different idols like maybe Leah Williamson and more female icons. How big of a game changer do you think the Lionesses have been to women's football now across the board?
Massively. I mean, growing up playing football, I was the only girl on the team, played for a boys team, played in boys leagues forever until you hit women's football. And now you see it even with the little ones. They're coming with Mary Earp shirts, Leah Williamson shirts, and it's just fantastic. Like, I really do think that Euros run just set the ball rolling, and now girls do want to be playing football, and they want to be playing football with other girls rather than with the boys, so it's fantastic. And
Ruby, you kind of mentioned there how you started out recently. Was the Lionesses a big impact on you joining Gosport?
Yeah, I've been playing another basketball, netball before that, so I just wanted to get back into the football action. So I guess it did give me a bit of a boost to join football again. So definitely.
Yeah, definitely. And I would say across the whole board, it looks like women's football is just growing. If you take the Women's League, the Pompey women's team, it looks like they're all growing. But non-league is slightly harder to grow. I feel like in the top levels, once again, you're seeing that substantial growth, but a lot harder to grow in non-league. How do women's football go about trying to grow across the whole women's board as a whole?
I think it's making it accessible, changing the stereotypes. So I feel like, and again, the Lionesses coming out with their hair done, their nails done, it just shows that football can be for everyone. You can go out on the pitch on a Sunday and play a good game of football, and you can still enjoy things that girls typically like. So I think that's been a big impact. Obviously, it's got to come from the top down. So starting at that point, again, changing those stereotypes, giving girls the opportunity to play without discrimination. So moving away from the whole girls can't play football idea. I think even with the little ones is just huge. Just having more girls playing, allowing them to play, like I said, letting them play with other girls, taking away that intimidation that the boys have, and letting them play for fun, letting them enjoy it first.
Well, definitely, and I think it's really powerful what Charlotte was saying there. And when driving up, you can see it on the other field over there, probably not too far away. Loads of women playing on there, loads of young girls. And is that the plan with Gosport Borough, the women's team at this stage in time, to try and get more of those young girls into the first team here eventually?
Yeah, we are still in talks with the management about where it's going to go in the future, but ideally we're both teachers, so we are passionate about getting young people in sport. So that is the idea, hopefully grow that youth side, and they'll be taking our place soon enough.
Yeah.
I did mention before we got into the filming, it's been a little bit of a turbulent season, but it finally looks like the wheels are starting to be put on the floor now for this Gosport women's team. Where can this team go?
I think, this is just a start, and talking about that accessibility, just even being able to play here and people being comfortable coming down to watch rather than in the middle of the field, I think is going to be massive. Bringing players in, it's a nice place to play, it's a supportive environment. So again, becoming a little bit more equal, bridging that gap between the reputation men's football gets and the reputation women's football gets, I think is just going to be huge. It's just the beginning.
Yeah, fingers crossed. And where can Gosport Women's take it to the next level? How do they go about getting it to that next step?
Hopefully just recruiting the right players, getting a new coach and management in to help that stability, and us just trying to get the word about really and try and invite people down for some open trial sessions, and yeah, just keep playing really and hopefully secure a top spot in Div 1 in the near future. And hopefully next season we'll get up into the top 3, so that'll be a good goal for us, I think.
Well, it'll be fantastic, and we wish you all the best here at Gosport Borough. Charlotte, for any females watching, how can people get involved at home?
I think just coming down, watching, your support is massive to us. And if you're interested, just coming along, like Ruby said, coming along to a training session, whether you haven't played since you were a girl or it's something you'd like to get into, we're hoping that there'll be something for everyone.
According to data from the Football Association, as of 2024, the number of women and girls playing football has been increased by 56%. Even looking at the top level of women's football, the Women's Super League, which is the top level in the country, saw a 41% rise in attendances. So, I think it's safe to say, after hearing what these industry standard professionals had to say, your support could very well be the difference between some of these clubs dying and staying alive. So if you can, try and get down to a local non-league game, or maybe even try women's football, because who knows, you might find a new team for you, and that support could very well be the difference between some of these clubs staying alive and dying. But thank you for watching this video. We will have a lot more content coming up, so we'll see you in the next few. But make sure to like and subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you in the next one.